Love it. Good stuff. Yeah, all right. Here we are. Welcome back. Hello at home. Welcome back to the Late Night Playset. My name is Jay Ryan. We are here this evening. It is Thursday. Tonight is 9/17. It's kind of a cool thing for our guest who we have here tonight. Spike Feresten is here for our September 17th show, 2020. He's not actually here. He's here via Zoom, but he looks just like that. He's got a whole setup over there. Hi, Spike.
How are you?
I'm good, man. Basically, I have been looking forward to this for a heck of a long time. We are sort of throwing out the rest of our show. I just want to talk to you for the hour, assuming you're good with that. I kind of want to touch on all the stuff. Our guest this evening is Spike Feresten. You know him from, he was a writer on Letterman, SNL, Seinfeld, for goodness sake, a little show called Seinfeld. I found him when he had a show called Car Matchmaker. And I bought all those seasons on iTunes when I found it. I was totally addicted. I thought it was great. And we have become a little bit of car buddies lately up in the mountains and certainly in Malibu. And I want to talk to him about his whole career and certainly how he turned it into cars at the end here. Not the end of his career, but most currently. Spike, thank you so much for doing our little show here, buddy. I really, really appreciate it.
Are you David Letterman? I thought you were Jay. You look like David Letterman. You're talking like David Letterman right now.
I can't even help it. I feel, it's funny. I noticed
Should
that
I
with
get
you
my
sometimes.
blue Letterman mug out so I can be like you?
Oh, geez. That is, now you told me, is that the actual deal right there?
It's what you have on your desk. Yeah, this is the mug from the last show on NBC.
But that's really, these are just blue mugs. You have an actual Dave mug, right?
I don't think there's any difference in them. What does it say on the bottom of yours?
Made in China, I'm pretty sure.
Walk your back, Spain. So these coffee mugs Dave used were Spanish.
I blame GE.
Inside is a little piece of paper that says, because I will die, I'm sure, soon, and no one will know what any of this stuff is, but it says, don't throw this away. This is David Letterman's mug from the last NBC show. That might be worth $20.
For when the family's going through the stuff?
eBay. Yeah.
Spike, I don't know where to start with you.
I've got so many questions for you.
Go ahead. Take it over.
Do the people watching this understand like what this desk is and how this gets started? And that's before I knew you. I remember seeing this on YouTube and going, what is that guy doing with what appears to be Dave's real desk and chairs?
Yep.
Yet he's doing a car podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, right? Maybe you can help me with that, Mr. Writer. Help me tell this damn story. It doesn't have to make sense. Why not just do a late night show? You've got the desk. I do. Are they just giving those out these days? Can you just get one? I'd love to just get one.
No, you do it from right there. You get everything you need.
Well, all right. I feel like that's kind of what I guess you're right. We've turned it into a podcast of late. In the beginning, we were trying to do kind of a variety-ish type show when you could have people here and we had performances and yoga demonstrations and stuff.
This looks like a TV show.
That's all I really know how to do, man. It's literally all I know how to do.
Let's see where I am. It does not look like a TV show. This is a guy sitting above his garage. That's what this is right here.
Did you? All right. Can we? I want to start. I wanted to kind of go in order, but I guess it doesn't really matter. I really want to know about your talk show. It was called Talk Show, wasn't it? With Spike Feresten?
Yes. Are you getting the same delay I'm getting, or are we hearing each other in real time? Because right now it sounds like to me that I'm talking to you in the space station.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm watching your lips move, and the audio matches it for me.
Yeah, I go like this, and then a minute later, I see myself do that. But I just want to make sure that you're hearing me in real time.
Yeah, on our side, it looks okay. I apologize for the delay on yours.
And I might just shrink my window down here because it's throwing me off. All right, good. I'm
Let me
listening.
start with this. Where are you from? How did you end up at 30 Rock? I know how I got there, but how did you get to 30 Rock?
I was an intern. You see, that's the echo. I think I'm just hearing your echo. Is that? It's gonna make me crazy. Is there any reason why I should be hearing myself echoing in your studio?
No. I'll turn my TV down. Maybe it's that. Listeners at home, turn your radios down.
Yeah, it could be that.
Is it any better?
That's a little better. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounded like one of those echoey cell phone calls where you say something and then you listen to yourself say it again. But now I think we have it. Perfect. Look at you. I was an intern, and I was via being a bartender in Boston. I met someone who was dating someone on the Letterman show, and that person got me an interview to be an intern on the show. And before I knew it, I was commuting from Boston to New York, interning in the graphics department for Saturday Night Live and Letterman. That's where it all started.
Oh, so was it the same for you then? Were you sort of shared among the shows? Because I technically worked for NBC, not the actual shows. So I was kind of like everywhere. I was wherever they put me, basically.
Were you a page?
I wasn't. I was doing. Do you not know this part about me too? My school. I was a
I
terrible
don't.
student,
No,
so
I
my
don't.
school set up like these internships and like work study programs. And the first year was my junior year. I started at the local TV station in Connecticut, and learned the ways of the world there. And then the next year was senior year. I worked at 30 Rock during the day. So I technically,
Wow.
I guess I was like an apprentice. Technically, I was in the apprentice program because at the end of it, they basically wanted me to join the union and become an audio guy there at 30 Rock, which is what I think they
So
kind of were
what were
prepping me
you?
to
So
do.
tell me what you were doing. Were you working on individual shows? Like, did you work on Donahue or
Yeah,
on
no, Donahue had
the
just it
news?
was it was there and it was just leaving, and Rosie O'Donnell was coming in to take over that show or that set rather, and I
Right,
did work on that, and that is where I actually met Daniel Kellison when he was running that show.
right, right.
But that
Wow.
was
So,
oh, go ahead.
but you were working audio, so you were in the studio while these shows were shooting.
Yeah, yeah. I was literally in the
Oh, that's
room
cool.
and generally on the floor, like helping with cable stuff for the boom, or sometimes I would
Right.
get to like mic a guest or whatever. It was basically a second assistant audio position.
Wow, that's a great job. Do you remember? And not many people do, but do you remember the announcers lounge that was kind
Mm,
of on the right side of the main floor when you'd walk over? There was one big lounge, and it was
on the
filled
eighth
with
floor?
Don. No, I think it was on the second floor or even the first floor. When you came in from Sixth Avenue, if you went right
Oh,
there,
that's
and
funny.
where Howard Stern's studio used to be, right down from there was a room that said announcer studio, NBC announcer studio, and in there would be Don Pardo and
Oh
like
my
seven
God.
other announcers warming up every morning, going Poughkeepsie, Tallahassee. It was just an amazing. I had never worked in television before, and it was like a cartoon. You go to the announcers lounge, and there they all are, and there's Don Pardo, and they're going, oh, ho, ho, okay, Saturday Night Live. And they
Yeah,
were all practicing their lines and getting ready. And I just thought, it was it's just TV isn't like that anymore. But 30 Rock was this unique little biosphere of everything in TV. And
yeah. I try to explain that to other people. It really was like the end of the studio system almost. It was like
right,
you had a career in that building. If you got a job in that building, you worked there for 40 years until you didn't work anymore.
right. And NBC was privately owned, I believe. This is all before General Electric owned it and
Whoa.
entertainment became like corporatized. So it was its own groovy thing, much cooler than it is now.
When you were there, it was already GE. It was already GE. That happened in the 80s, I think, right?
No, it was not. I was there before GE. I
Really?
remember the switch.
No kidding.
Yes.
So you were there when they got rid
We
of
couldn't
of NBC Radio and all that shit.
Yes. I couldn't
Wow.
believe that a corporate business entity, because when I was young, I just knew I can't. There are two things I'm not going to be able to do. I won't be able to join the military. I have a lot of relatives in the military, but I won't be able to follow the rules. I can't. I had problems with authority, and I knew if I went in there, it's going to be bad for the military,
You're
and
gonna
it's
pick
not
the
going to
freaking
work.
thing apart, sure.
And I couldn't wrap my head around regular business either. And luckily found my way into entertainment, which I thought, this is, it's like music, which I love, but there's, it's kind of self-contained. You're not on the road, you're not touring. It's right. It's and it resonated with me a little more, being working on a show like Saturday Night Live rather than being up on stage playing in a band. So, you know, my first year as an intern there, it was, it's wild. There were still the remnants of Saturday Night Live that I had grown up on. Like, Belushi's Coke dealer, I met him. There
That's
were
so
people,
funny.
the people
You
I
were
had
there at the
grown
changing
up
of the
watching.
guards, like a cast wise or anything.
It was Phil Hartman's first year, and Dana
Oh wow.
Carvey and John Lovitz. But I had grown up watching, I remember my dad waking me up going, "You got to watch this new show." I must have been 11 years old. I forget what year SNL starts, but I've been watching it since its beginning. So, again, for me, these were just people I had seen on TV, and I hadn't really seen anybody on TV. And then, by the time I got there, people I had read about. I'd read the Saturday Night Live biography, and it was kind of fascinating to be inside of it. It was dreamlike for me, and very vivid, and very wonderful in such a corporatized building. The building looks like a giant office building, but it's all fun and games and entertainment and comedy. And I absolutely loved it. So by the time I get to Letterman, it's somewhere in there in the 90s that GE, I believe, buys NBC, because things kind of changed overnight. there were,
Right.
there were forms for office supplies.
Oh
There were
gosh.
all of these like office things that for me personally, it was really depressing. It was really depressing that now I was in a corporatized business. Now, of course, all entertainment is corporatized, and it, lurches slowly like an iceberg, and no one, show or anything can affect it. It's too giant. But back
Right.
then, it kind of was rock and rollish. It was neat to kind of be there at least for a year or two of that and see it.
Do you think the building was? Do you think again? I consider that a heck of a changeover. I'm sure that building probably was a little more buttoned up when Johnny was there or whatever, versus 80s New York when Dave came in and sort of pulled the curtain back on the whole place and
Yeah.
showed us the
Well,
hallways and
that's when
everything that
he
we used to sort of
started
ignore.
pushing. Right. I mean, that was fun to have corporate overlords that we didn't like and Dave could push back against. Um, that's part
Isn't
of
that
what
a
made
pretty
me love the
unusual
show, was
situation?
him. Not for a late night show. What I love about late night is it talks about everything that's kind of going on in the host life, in the show's life, and then out in the world. And back then and in normal days, entertainment, that we don't have a political situation like we have right now that dominates the news day and night, and you can do shows based on just what happened in the first few hours of it. Back then,
Right.
news was kind of boring, right? There wasn't even a lot of tabloid. There's no TMZ. So the show would turn in on itself. And what I loved about Dave was that group of interns, because I was young. It was my first year of college. And I was so jealous that he not only had interns, like what a great internship, but that he was putting those interns on television. Like that
Yeah.
to me was like, that is how I have to, this is where I need to be. I don't know why, but I need to be one of those interns, and I need to be working for this guy whose comedy I feel is the only thing that's making me laugh these days. Like it hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, this is where I need to be. There's nothing else that I'm interested in. It almost, like you, and I know your story, it becomes an obsession.
Yeah.
But it does, right?
Yeah, it sure did. You could certainly one could draw the parallels to currently for
But
sure.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that because, we before I met this woman who got me the internship, the previous year I had my roommate at Berklee College of Music was from New York, or knew someone in New York, and he said, "Hey, I can get us Letterman tickets. Would you ever want to go to that?" And I was
Oh
like,
man.
"My God, yes." And a few months later, we had tickets, and we're in Boston, right there on Mass Ave at Berklee, and I made a bet with some of the guys in the dorm. I said, "Look, I will get on the show tonight. Watch it at 12:30. They're like, what are
Ah,
you talking about? I don't know how I'm going to do it,
ah.
but let's put some money down on the table. I'm going to get on the screen, but watch the whole show. If I don't find an organic opening, I'm going to find an inorganic opening, somewhat like you did. Right. And so we get into the audience. I'm really in the back of the audience with my friend Jeff. And he's like, are you really going to do this? I go, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had this really lame 80s like chess king blazer that I remember was like white and black and red, really bad 80s fashion. And Dave comes out to warm up the audience and he goes, all right. He goes, I don't know, today's Canadian holiday. I don't know if there's anybody here from Canada. Is there anybody here from Canada? And I raised my hand and two other people did. And he goes, okay, you four people, you're from Canada, you sure? Because tonight we're going to do something special. I only want you four people to come up when I hand out the lyrics to Oh Canada, right? And so
You
Dave does the
manifested this
monologue.
thing.
He sets everything up. I've never seen the clip. I lived in fear that Dave would find this out when I was writing on the show. He sets up the bit and he goes, okay, Canadians, come on up. And I walked right up on stage and turned and grabbed it and mugged for the camera for a second and won the bet.
Wow.
And
But
it
that
wasn't
didn't happen all that. That was not that was a, I mean, you made that happen.
that was
How the hell
just
did that
luck.
happen?
I was a very lucky human back then. I remember things worked out for me just through sheer determination or obsession.
Yeah.
They don't anymore, but they did. And it didn't kind of scratch the itch. It made things much worse because
Wow.
I was like, boy, the studio's small. I've never been in the television studio. I really like everything that's happening here. And, I just started basically just dreaming about trying to get an internship on the show. I was a bartender during the day to pay for college, and I was going to Berklee College of Music. Frankly, I wasn't very into it, and I wasn't very focused. But this thing was always in the back of my head, and I was in, English classes at Berklee College of Music, focusing on my writing, music writing, and just, regular writing, and not even worried about anything music-wise other than production. So when that moment came, and this woman, Harriet, walked into Legal Seafoods where I bartended wearing the Letterman varsity jacket, I nearly tackled her. And I said, where did you get that? She goes, what? Where did you get the jacket? She goes, my boyfriend works for the show. You're kidding. And I said, can you get me one? That was my first stupid question. She goes, no, they're not going to give you one of those. I said, okay, forget that. Can you get me an internship? And she goes, yeah, the guy's still in love with me. I'm sure he'd do me that favor, but what's your name? Are you going to introduce yourself?
Wow.
And I said, oh, sorry. I'm Mike, the bartender, Michael. I didn't have the nickname Spike yet. And she said, well, Mike, I'm going to call him up and I'm going to get you an internship. Very sweet. And, she's single-handedly responsible for this career in entertainment that I have.
That is absolutely amazing. Someone
Wild
you didn't
story,
know
isn't
who
it?
walked into a restaurant.
I know. Well, she was just hired to be she was a model, and she was also just hired to be a hostess. She kind of was, I guess, was pulling a geographic after this bad New York relationship and tired of modeling. And she ended up doing that. Years later, I caught up with her. She ended up being working for David Mamet. So she, and David Mamet turns out to be down at Santa Monica Airport with a hangar across from mine and a Porsche guy. So when I meet him, when I didn't know I'm meeting David Mamet, I go, hi. He goes, hi. I go, nice plane. He goes, oh, you like Porsches? Oh, yeah, we're talking about Porsche. He goes, I go, what's your name? I go, David. I go, Glenn Ross, David? Are you David Mamet? He goes, yeah. I go, do you know Harriet? He goes, Harriet? Harriet's instrumental in, making my career. And, it's
cow.
an amazing little, isn't that wild?
It is. I'll tell you, backing up to NBC, though, just for a second, because that's what I do, your story really parallels mine a lot. I was a musician when I was growing up. You didn't say, did you say what your instrument was?
I play guitar and trumpet, but I was writing. It was music scoring and production engineering, working the boards and doing all that stuff.
Wow. But so you had an understanding of theory and everything, obviously.
There was 2 intense years of that. Yeah. They when you go to Berklee, I don't know if they do it now, but they sit you down and on the first day they play you a song, and it's a complex jazz song, and they say in 2 years we will be able to play this once, and you will be able to write down all the parts. and you go, "There's no fucking way." Sure. At the end of 2 years, it's not easy. They play one note, they play a C note, and you can do it. You write everything out. It's amazing.
Well, but so while you
And then
didn't
then you forget all of it.
while you didn't follow that application, though, it does seem like it almost trained your brain how to deconstruct. Doesn't that
I
help you in
found
your
the
joke
more
writing?
no, I found the
Oh,
more I learned about music, the less I enjoyed it. And nothing against musicians, and maybe you feel this way, but sometimes it's like hanging out with baseball players. It's not really, a group of the smartest humans that you're around. And, I would have been the techie guy. I would have been the nerdy techie guy working the board. And I wasn't quite happy with that either. I found that I wanted to write something. At the time it was music. But now it's this stuff, TV, entertainment, movies. But wait, so what's your music history?
oh, nothing. I was just gonna. Well, thank you for getting back to it. I was gonna say that my thing was I was going to be a musician. My dad got me a drum set when I was like one, I think I got my first snare drum when I was like 1.5, whatever that Christmas was, and then I got a drum set the next year, and not like a Muppet drum set, like an actual drum set. And they had me taking lessons from when I was really young. So it really seemed like that was going to be the path. I was probably going to go to like Musicians Institute or the New School, something like that, something trendy
Mm-hmm.
and hip in my mind. Uh, the one thing was I'm a horrible student, so I never factored that in. But where it comes to the parallel with you is all of that changed when I went on the NBC studio tour and was actually in those rooms for the first time and felt that energy and that magic. And then I said, nope, this is where I need to be, period. And then I
Yeah, they have
literally,
all.
manifested that same thing. I stopped doing anything and everything else while I concentrated on that, and somehow it worked out. It happened.
Part of it is the security. They hold you back. They make you wait. You have to wait at those elevators. And
Mm.
then you go up, and then you see it happening, and you're being held off, and you see a famous person or two in the hallway. It's you're right about that. It's almost like what makes a great comedy club is a small room with brick walls and being dark. That is one of the greatest television buildings I've ever been into. The lack of space, the small studios, 4 different studios on one floor, and you
Yeah,
know suddenly there's Dan Rather walking down the hall, and you see the people you just saw in the morning on the Today Show going up to do a spot on Letterman.
it's
It's
amazing.
really addicting. And then the way the whole building transforms on Friday night and Saturday night for Saturday Night
For eighth
Live, a
floor,
whole
yeah.
different thing happens. And yeah, you're jamming at 1 till 1 in the morning and spilling out of there too. It's a young man's game for sure, but it is it's uncut heroin is what I like to say. If you like entertainment, it's
Well,
hardcore
and you know
and
what?
it's
When that
wonderful.
show, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When that show went when they left NBC to go to CBS, there was a party in the studio at the end of the run, and I
Hmm.
believe you were there for that, right?
Yeah,
In six
yeah,
A.
yeah, yep.
That
I was
supposedly
there.
is when Glenn Arbor told me that the NBC audio crew gave this microphone to Dave or Lori or Marty or whoever would have taken it at the
That
time,
mic, right, right.
to bring with them to the theater, and I heard that they took his guest or his whatever his desk chair and maybe even the guest chairs, and supposedly those might even be them. I don't know. Kathleen's dead, so I
Well,
can't ask
that's
her.
where that was the night I got this. That's
Yeah.
where I yanked that off the desk. And then I think there's something up in the wall. Oh, we all have they give you a bunch of stuff. So I think the ticket from the last night, they gave us one of those
Oh, that's
sealed in
nice.
glass or something. It's up on my thing there.
What was it like leaving what was arguably one of the biggest shows on television at the time to go to what was for sure the biggest show on television for at least a good run there? What was that like? I mean, to go from and then you did it again later, but we'll stick with Letterman for a sec.
You know, there's a moment before the decision is made where I believe Dave has been offered the time slot after Leno and told that Leno is only going to be in that spot for a year and then you'll get it. I believe that was the deal offered, but Bill Carter could correct me if I'm wrong. And the decision Dave was making, take that deal with NBC and stay on, or go to CBS, right? And there was a period of time I remember where Dave was just radio silent to everybody, including us. Nobody knew what he was going to decide. And we had an office, a writer's room office, not directly across from Dave, but maybe one office down from Dave. He was on the corner, and then you walked a few feet, and then we had a conference room right there. And frequently at night, you would find us all in there trying to come up with an idea for the next day's show, right? Under a lot of pressure, but having fun and, fooling around. And Steve O'Donnell or Rob Burnett, the head writer, we'd pitch him ideas. He'd go in. He'd come back exasperated. No, Dave's upset. Or this, yes, that's good. We're going to do this. So either Steve or Rob went in there to pitch Dave, and Tom Brokaw just suddenly walks into the room. And he goes, hey guys, how you doing? Like, hey, Tom Brokaw. He walks into our room. What are you doing? He goes, I was just back from, I do a terrible Brokaw. I don't have
It's not awful.
I'm back from, I just got back from Africa. There was some conflict going on in Africa. And he's like, we landed. We were like, how did you get there? I mean, there's a war going on. It's like, well, we landed here on this part of the country. We drove for a day. Then we took another, like a little puddle jumper here over this river. And then we landed in the middle of nowhere in this village. And it was dark. So we decided to just walk into this group of villagers. We didn't know if they were hostile or not. And just asked them if we could just spend the night in their tents. And they luckily didn't try to kill us and said it was okay. They didn't really speak English except for the chief. And so I went into the tent with the chief and sat down with him. And I said, I'm Tom Brokaw. I'm a newsman from NBC. And the chief nodded his head and he said, so is Dave leaving NBC or is he staying? Is he going to go to CBS? That's how big the story was. That's a true story.
That's amazing. I had no idea where you were going to go with that. Wow.
He said he wasn't joking. He wasn't telling us a joke. That's how big the story was, and that's how far and deeply it had saturated. And, I've lived through a couple moments like that. The end of Seinfeld was like that, too, where the saturation point in culture was almost 100%. And that's how big that was. So, we didn't know what was going on. And a short time later, maybe a week or two later, I was in one of the fellow writers, Donick, my buddy Donick's office. I don't know what we were doing. We were hanging there late, and Warren Littlefield walked in. Nobody else was in the office. Dave was down in his office.
President of NBC at the time, for anybody else.
President of NBC, Warren Littlefield, who is a terrific guy. I got to know him after and got to know him on Seinfeld and really liked him at the time.
Oh, of course. Of course.
I thought he was the devil at the time because he didn't give Dave what he wanted. And Dave earned that spot, and I was upset about it, as we all were. And Dave had already made the decision to go to CBS. And I remember Warren Littlefield going around the corner, and Donick and I had some harsh words for him. We leaned out and then went, oh shit, did we just tell the president of NBC to go fuck himself? But I think we did. And that was the end of it. I'm not sure what happened in that meeting because the decision had already been made, but maybe Bill Carter knows. But after that, it was just this walk across the street to this whole new operation at the Ed Sullivan Theater.
But so squeaky clean and new. Everything was brand new for you guys.
Yeah, it was different. It was a different vibe. Dave owned the whole thing, and we didn't have NBC to kind of. We really liked being picked on by NBC and General Electric. It gave us something to talk about and write about. And me in particular, I loved it. I thought it was great. And when we were doing this other thing with a friendly network, that was okay too. It just wasn't as fun, right? Like I really, at the time, was a very rebellious personality, and to have something up to fight against, I loved it. It kind of tapped into this, the anger that kind of drove my comedy, and it was fun. And CBS was fun in its own way. It never the same for me.
Well, is that, but then you went back to NBC. Did you, I can't imagine on Seinfeld you had any of those experiences, but you were dealing with probably all the same people.
Yeah, but that was a wholly different idea. I mean, I stayed on with Letterman right through the London shows, 1 year, because it was the only show I wanted to write for. I stayed 1 year longer than I wanted to, just in case I was wrong and I shouldn't leave. So I wrote there for
Interesting.
5 years. And then it really just became about, wanting a non-city, non-apartment life. I loved
Really?
cars. I liked dogs, and I wanted a backyard, and I didn't want to live in a box anymore. And I had done 9 in Boston and 9 years, I think, or a bunch of years, almost 10 years in New York and a bunch of years in Boston. And I wanted a yard. We would go out there for the Emmys, and I'd look around LA and go, this is great. This is
Right.
exactly what I want. I want a convertible. Um, I want to smoke cigars in that convertible and drive on this famous Sunset Boulevard. I
Right.
want to hike, and I want to sit in my backyard. It was like that. That's how I made that decision. So I quit. I just quit and moved to LA
Wow. That was
and
literally
figured
on
I'd
here.
find
Why
it.
did you leave? That's amazing.
Yeah,
Huh.
I just wanted a different life for myself outside of that, which I don't know. It seems like the millennials get credit for wanting to have life outside of work, but back then it seems like that's something you do when you're young. You don't want to spend all day long in an office. So, I was just thrilled to be in this warm climate, and get a
Well, they
car.
brought the show. They brought the show out here a couple times, so you would have been with it
Oh yeah,
then, right?
yeah.
In the
No,
first
I
couple
know.
years, and they
Yeah,
were doing
yeah.
it, I think, from TV City, right? From the nice
Yes.
big studios.
Yeah. No, we
Uh,
had a lot of, and that's where, that very first year, 2 weeks into getting hired, Dave goes, I hear you like cars. I don't even remember how he heard this. And I had never really spoken to Dave other than hello. And he goes, come out to Santa Monica Airport. I want you to drive my cars. And it was a terrifying prospect for a human being like myself, who is quite insecure at the time, but also kind of terrified of, a Lorne Michaels and David Letterman. These are comedy gods to me. I don't even want
mhm.
to interact with them. I don't have what it takes to sit down and have a conversation with them at a time. So the idea of driving his cars was exciting but terrifying.
Yeah.
So we fly out on a Friday night. He goes, come out to the airport Saturday morning and just ring the bell or call me. He had a hardline phone. And I go, you're going to be there? He goes, yeah, I sleep there. I have a cot and a bathroom in this hangar that opens up like this with a padlock on it. I went, okay, Dave. Howard Hughes. That's normal. And I didn't know much about cars at that point. I just knew I liked to drive them. And I rang the buzzer that rang his hangar there. And like he said, all I hear is, yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm like, fuck. I think he said to show up at 9 in the morning. And I go, it's Spike. It's the new writer. And he goes, what the fuck do you want? And I go, well, you go, I'm kidding, Spike. Come in. And then
Just
he
breaking you in, Spike.
buzzes me. But that's where I stayed. He knocked me off balance. I stayed there for a few years, actually. And then he opens up this hangar door, and in there is a 4-cam Speedster, a
Hmm.
silver 914-6, a red Rosso Corsa Ferrari Dino.
Cool.
Many of the
Cool name.
cars that I ended up buying, a 60s 356. And he said, I want you to drive all of these cars, and a bunch of Austin Healey's. But he goes, I want you to start with this 356.